All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the weekly webinar. We are super excited to have you here today and especially excited to hear from our speaker. And I won't keep you from that for very long, but of course, I have a few announcements to make before we get started. And that's a reminder to mute yourselves, please, so that we can hear our speaker. And that if you need closed captioning, just click on the CC at the bottom of your screen and you'll be able to have that option as we have our program today. So again, thank you for being here. One more announcement, maybe two more. One is that as every week I've been reminding you about our wonderful film, Why, and that is still showing. We'll be showing that across Kansas City and throughout Kansas for a while now. The next show is actually this evening, Thursday, April 20th. And tonight we'll be in Leavenworth, the First United Methodist Church in Leavenworth, Kansas. If you get to my Alliance email, which I think most of you do because you're here, you'll find the address, which is 422 Chestnut Street in Leavenworth there. We are, I've heard, expecting quite a big crowd, which is very exciting. And I say the more the merrier. So if you are available to join us, it is at 6:30 this evening at the First United Methodist Church in Leavenworth. It's totally free. The whole show will run about an hour. If you have questions, feel free to send email to myalliance@kumc.edu. So I think that actually is the only announcement for now. So I'm excited to introduce our speaker for today. And she is Paige Harding, Miss Kansas Volunteer 2023. So we have a title holder in our midst today, and I have had the honor of talking to Paige prior to today, and she is just lovely and with a great story, so I'm so excited for you to hear from her. I'll tell you a little more about her. Paige is from Dodge City, a native of Dodge City, and she became passionate about ending Alzheimer's disease when her grandmother developed Alzheimer's disease at the age of 57. And throughout her grandmother's journey, Paige saw how Alzheimer's affected the whole family and how it will affect the family for generations to come. And because of that, Paige has been involved in the Walk to End Alzheimer's for the last 12 years. She was a board member for the Walk in Topeka for the past 2 years. She's a community educator, and her favorite endeavor has been creating a group called Purple Pals. And I love that she has her purple on. I have purple pants on, Paige, so I'm totally here with you. You just can't see it. And she started Purple Pals at KU in January of 2019. Purple Pals connects college students to people in early stage Alzheimer's disease and gives caregivers a chance to care for themselves. And I know that the audience here understands how important those things are. Purple Pals has continued at KU and is working on expanding to Fort Hays State University, Pittsburg State University, Washburn University, and even Oklahoma State University. So Purple is going to go worldwide, I can just tell, Paige. So we're excited to hear more about that. Paige is currently in her second year at Washburn University School of Law. She's currently Miss Kansas Volunteer, and she will be going to the Miss Volunteer America pageant in Jackson, Tennessee in June. I don't know if we get to vote, but we all will vote for you, Paige, okay? So with that, I am going to turn over the stage to you. And Paige is going to tell us some things. Please use the chat if you have comments and questions. One, I did think of my other announcement. Paige, in addition to being Miss Kansas Volunteer and a law student and an all-around great person, has to go to class right after this conversation. And I know that many of us are talkers and we get very excited, but we're going to have to stop on time so Paige can go. So I'll ask you all to help me remember that. All right, with that being said, Paige, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kelly. I am so excited to be here and to speak with all of you. And I have a little presentation, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen real quick. Let's see here. Okay. All right, so yes, as Kelly said, my name is Paige Harding, and she went through pretty much everything I was going to go through on my first slide as well. So she's ahead of it. But yes, I am from Dodge City, Kansas. I got a bachelor's in arts and history from the University of Kansas, where I started Purple Pals. I'm currently in my second year of law school. And yes, I have a long Alzheimer's bio. I've been a part of the Walk to End Alzheimer's for about 12 years now. I'm currently a board member for the Topeka Walk. I am a former community educator. I loved doing that across the whole entire state of Kansas. I am regularly asked to speak at various Alzheimer's events throughout the state. And yes, I am Miss Kansas Volunteer, and my platform is about Alzheimer's disease, and I'll be covering that here in a little bit. So I first became passionate about Alzheimer's disease when my grandma Connie was diagnosed. My grandma Connie she lived in Wichita, and she was a naturalist. She was the coolest grandma ever. She was always bringing home like little possums and owls and snakes. And so it sounds like such a strange childhood and upbringing, but you know, when a possum gets hit on the side of the road or something, someone's got to take care of those babies. So that is what she did. You can see her with a turtle in one of the pictures there. But she started developing symptoms of Alzheimer's disease at the age of 57. And it wasn't, you know, as you all probably know, it was little things like people noticed her starting to repeat herself and forget things and forget where she was supposed to be at a certain time. And so it was her coworkers who reached out to my mom first about it and said, we think something's wrong. And so we got a hard diagnosis at the age of 57, which is very young. And so we later found out through testing that she had 2 APOE4s, which is what caused her to develop the disease at such a young age, which is rare. So I remember when I was about 10 years old is when this journey began. And so I remember hearing my parents talk about how she was sick, but at first I didn't really notice anything. And then as time went on, obviously she progressed. And so I witnessed it a lot more firsthand. So the biggest thing that has impacted my motivation for ending Alzheimer's is that I witnessed my parents and aunts and uncles be the sandwich generation. So they were all taking care of little kiddos. Both of my parents were working 2 jobs. My mom still works 2 jobs, and also trying to take care of my grandmother, which eventually became a full-time job. And so I have an aunt and uncle who live in Hutchinson, Kansas, which was about 2 hours from Dodge City. And so for a while, and that aunt had 4 little kiddos as well. And so for a while, we would switch back and forth. My grandma would stay with them for a couple weeks, and then she would come stay with us for a couple weeks, and then back and forth. And we witnessed as that went on, her confusion that, you know, sometimes she would think she was in Hutchinson when she was in Dodge, and vice versa. And we finally realized, you know, we probably can't keep bouncing her around any longer. And so we finally ended up having her go to a special Alzheimer's facility in Denver, which is where I have another aunt and uncle. So they were able to keep up with her there, but that was really a great facility. It only had about 20 patients there, which was really awesome, really great care for her. And throughout all of this, I realized several things: the lack of affordable, good care for people with Alzheimer's disease, and then the mental and physical toll that it takes on caregivers. So my mom is a nurse, which was great for this situation, but she would be at work all day, taking care of sick people. Then she would come home. Out of 3 kids, one of us was always sick, you know, and then as well as my grandmother. And so I just saw the mental and physical toll that it took on her. And so, yes, as I discussed a little bit, towards the end of my grandma's life, we had her blood tested, and that is when we found out the APOE status. And having 2 APOE4s is what the doctors think made her have or caused her to develop Alzheimer's at such an early age. So at this point, my mom and two of my aunts have gotten the blood test. And so no one has two APOE4s, but everyone has one APOE4, which will obviously increase their risk of Alzheimer's disease, but hopefully we won't see the symptoms until later in their life. And then my uncle has opted out of testing. He has decided not to get tested. So they were all blood tests. I don't know if I'll get tested or not. I think that I want to, but that's obviously a personal decision that everyone who has Alzheimer's in their family probably eventually has to make, yes or no. So here's a couple pictures of my sisters and I with my grandma. And yeah, as I said, just the coolest grandma. So all of this prompted me to start Purple Pals, which was founded in January of 2019 at the University of Kansas. And so we started out as we would have events at a community hall in a church that was right off of campus, and people would bring their loved one with Alzheimer's disease, our pals as we call them, and we would do fun games with them, do activities, have exercise class, just a whole bunch of fun stuff. And it would give a chance for their caregiver to go take some time and care for themselves. And so this is everything that I've envisioned Purple Pals to be. It was awesome. Unfortunately, then we hit COVID. So we did a lot of Zoom programs, deliveries with meals, deliveries of little activity bags straight to people's homes, our pals' homes. And that was great for COVID, but obviously not ideal. And so currently, as Kelly kind of mentioned, we are partnered with a senior resource center, the Midland PACE program at KU, and a couple nursing homes. And we currently have over 250 volunteers, student volunteers at KU. So our big goal is just trying to find more volunteer opportunities for all of our volunteers, because it is overwhelming, the amount of people that we have, which is a very good problem to have. So we currently have chapters at both Oklahoma State and KU. And then starting in the fall of 2023, we should have chapters at Fort Hays, K-State, Washburn, Pitt State, and Iowa State. So I'm hoping that that all works out. We are an official 501c3 organization and are working to grow our board so that we can continue to spread. We are partnered with a lot of senior resource centers and nursing homes, but I would love to get back to the way that we were before COVID, where we would have little events, because when I envisioned starting Purple Pals, it was partially to give our pals with Alzheimer's disease a sense of freedom, and just fun social interaction, but also give time for the caregivers to care for themselves. So hopefully we can get back there in the future. So here's some pictures of things that we did. We made a puzzle and a tie blanket. It was a lot of fun. Here's a couple random activities. We would always send some girls to nursing homes throughout town. And so while that's not giving an unpaid caregiver some time off, it was giving some paid caregivers some time off when we would do that. And then we delivered Christmas cards out to some of our pals with Alzheimer's disease. And we also do Meals on Wheels. So there's some of our girlies doing that. And here's some pictures of the monthly activity bags. We always made it really fun. So for Halloween, we all dressed up in costumes and then almost trick-or-treated, but gave our pals treats, which was cute, and dressed up like little elves. And so, yes, so here's some things about me being Miss Kansas Volunteer. I was crowned in October, actually in Leavenworth, funny enough, which is where the movie is tonight. And I will be traveling to Miss Volunteer America in June. And my platform is the ABCs of Alzheimer's disease, which stands for awareness, building funds, and care. So I spread awareness primarily through social media because we need more young people involved in the fight to end Alzheimer's disease, and that is a great way to reach out to them. Building funds, I primarily do that through my Walk to End Alzheimer's work, and care, which is I encompass throughout all my work with Purple Pals. So something that I think is pretty cool, but I wish that there were more. I am the only title holder out of all 50 states and Washington, D.C., who is advocating for Alzheimer's disease. So each and every one of us has a cause that we are working for and taking to the national level. And I'm the only one with Alzheimer's disease, which is kind of cool, but I wish that we had more young people advocating for Alzheimer's disease. So I hope to get that done. Being Miss Kansas volunteer has been great because it has really amplified my voice in the fight to end Alzheimer's disease. I was doing all of this work before I became Miss Kansas, and I will continue doing all of this work after I became long after I'm Miss Kansas. However, having a sparkly crown on your head kind of helps to do this stuff. So I'm so thankful to Kelly, who has helped reach out to me and is allowing me to be here right now. It is pretty cool, but really at the end of this, I hope that I can say that I have gotten so many more volunteers on board. I've inspired so many people to join the fight to end Alzheimer's disease and then just continue working after that. And something that I do that's kind of fun, I do Alzheimer's Awareness Wednesdays on my social media where I just post little facts or stories or movie recommendations or book recommendations for Alzheimer's disease. And that's about all I have. So if there are any questions, I would love to chat.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Paige. And folks, feel free to unmute yourselves and speak up if you like, or to use the chat. And while I give you time to do that, I will ask a question or two, Paige. And I honestly can't remember if I already asked you this when we talked before. So I'll bring it back if I did. And that is, I think it is so important for younger generations to be aware of Alzheimer's disease. I think, when you're 20 years old, you certainly don't have Alzheimer's on the top of your list, if it's on your list at all. And I'm wondering, what do you think is most motivating for your peers in terms of learning about Alzheimer's disease, for their families, for themselves, for eliminating it eventually, which I think is the goal for all of us?
So 4 years ago, when I started Purple Pals, there were not many of our volunteers who had a loved one with Alzheimer's disease. There just weren't. And now, only 4 years later, so many more of our volunteers are saying, my grandma or grandpa just got diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. It is so much more prevalent now than it was even 4 years ago. And so anyone who has watched their loved ones slowly become less and less themselves is definitely motivated to join the fight and provide care for people with Alzheimer's disease and volunteer and fundraise. And so I've definitely seen an increase in that over the past 4 years. But the other thing is, I think that awareness is just spreading in general. We have seen so much about Alzheimer's disease in the news lately, in pop culture. There are many more movies and books coming out about it. And Still Alice is one of the books, and now it's a movie, that I always recommend for our volunteers to watch because it shows such a raw picture of what Alzheimer's disease is like. And so I think that with a mix of all of those things, it has been easier to get volunteers and to get more people involved. And now we have over 250 volunteers, which is just crazy, at the University of Kansas. And so usually once a volunteer comes once, I would say, especially when I first started out, it was hard to get people to dip their toes in the water, but then they love it. because usually they're around so many of their friends. They love caring for and hanging out with people in the early stages of Alzheimer's disease. So then they realize that it's a lot of fun and it's easier to keep them coming back.
Perfect. Oh, Patty, there's a question. Yes, go for it.
Thank you. Oh, Paige, you are so inspiring. This is just awesome. I've loved your presentation. My husband has had Alzheimer's for 8 years and been a patient of Dr. Burns, and we're pretty closely tied in with KU and One Day KU and all the good work that's being done. Having said that, we have a grandson who's a junior at KU. He's in the Beta fraternity. He's loving his college experience. And he's actually named for Charles, his grandfather. So I know he would wrap his arms around your volunteer efforts in a heartbeat and probably get the whole Beta house behind him. So how would he? Yeah, for sure. I mean, these are fine young men and they love stuff like this, to get involved and make a difference. And they all have grandparents, and I'm sure more than not, several of them have Alzheimer's or aunts and uncles, like you said. So how would he find out about that? Because I've never, as interested as he always is and asks me questions about, how is grandpa, what's going on, anything new. I've never heard him mention your purple power. So how would he find out about that and get involved if he wants to?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's actually, I was a Chi Omega at KU.
Great.
We are mainly with Chi Omegas and Sigma Kappas right now, but we just had a couple boys join the board that are in the Delta house and the Sigma Nu house at KU. So I will give him our Instagram, and he can message the Instagram and get to know them that way.
His name is Charlie Mac, M-A-C,
okay.
Andrews.
Perfect. I'm writing this down.
And feel free to reach out to him. He's actually out of town this weekend for his spring formal, but come Monday morning, I'm going to tell him to watch for something from you. And if he can't actually get involved, I don't know how busy he is and finals coming up and everything, but I know he would know someone who would want to get on board.
Perfect. So I just put our social media handle in the chat. It's purple.pals.club. And then you can see a little bit more about what we do on social media. And let me put our email address in there as well. But that is great. We would love to have more involvement from boys because we have just so many girls, but that would be awesome.
Well, he's a good kid, and these Betas have done some wonderful things, and they have a very strong alumni board. So I think if he can help at all, he would want to do that.
Yay, awesome. Great. Well, thank you for sharing.
And you can get my information from Kelly, so please feel free to reach out to me as well.
Awesome.
I'd love to stay connected with you.
Oh, great. Yes, I will do that.
Okay, good.
I love it. This is exactly one of the goals of the webinar. Oh, sorry. Paige, I wonder if you would say a little more to your comfort level about your family's experience of the genetic testing and kind of what that was like. And yeah, I don't know. I don't want to lead you into an answer I want. But if you would say more about that, I think people would be interested. I am.
Yeah, I think my mom's actually on here. If she can speak to that a little bit too. Jan, are you on?
Should we put her on the spot? I was wondering if that was a connection, but I didn't want to call
Yeah.
her out unnecessarily. But
Hello,
hi,
I am
welcome.
on. Can you guys hear me?
We can. Thank you.
Yeah. I am in the car, so I'm going to pull over. I've actually been in a conference today, a medical conference, and one of your KU physicians spoke at our conference today. So I've been listening about Alzheimer's earlier. We made the choice. I think genetic testing is definitely an individual's choice. You know, at this point, we know we have no cure for Alzheimer's. So it's a tough decision to say, I'm going to test for a disease that I know there's no cure for. So I think a lot of people decide I'm not going to do it. What I'm going to deal with things as they come. For us, the three girls, there's 3 girls and a boy. I think taking care of our mother and seeing day to day, we wanted to know if our chances were that increased, and maybe because as mothers, maybe preparing our children for that journey. There's more resources now and much more in society. We talk about it a lot more, but even 10 years ago, when sometimes seeing persons with that type of memory loss and some of their behaviors, it was difficult. And so I think I was wanting to prepare my children if I were to have that disease earlier on.
Wow, that's really generous. Thank you to both of you for sharing that, for doing that not only for yourselves, but I think it says a lot to share that with society as a whole. And that's certainly something that we are in favor of at the ADRC in terms of our research work and our clinical trials. So our hats off to you for doing that and for sharing your story. Are there other comments or questions from anybody that's watching today? I think you all took me seriously when I said we have to make sure we stop on time, which I know Paige appreciates. So thank you.
2:40 can be the hard stop time. Then I've got a little extra time. I can make it to class fast.
All right. Paige, Cheryl is asking where one can be tested. So maybe you can speak to that.
So
Or your mom.
yeah, I know that there are several. I'm not an expert on this. I'm in law school, but there are several different ways you can get tested. But I think the most common is the blood test. So I recommend just asking your doctor about it, but because you might be able to just start there. That might be able to be something that they could do or send the lab off. But starting with your doctor. I also saw that Amy said, oh, well, I guess it was direct message, but she asked how we can get things started and similar programs started in the Kansas City metro area. So I have tried, after I started Purple Pals at KU, I was home in my hometown of Dodge City for the summer. And so I tried to get this similar program started in Dodge City, and I wanted it to be at the Senior Resource Center and then just have volunteers from the community come in. So from churches or like our high school sports programs do a lot of volunteer work in Dodge City, and so pull them in. And so there was another organization who had a program that was kind of similar to this. It was people would just go one-on-one. So you would be partnered with someone with a couple or family with Alzheimer's disease, and then that person would just go in, they would make their own schedule and go into the home and hang out with their loved one with Alzheimer's disease for a little bit. And so because of that kind of competing program, we did not start Purple Pals in Dodge City. I helped to try to get the message out a little bit more because they weren't on social media. They didn't have a website. So it was all by word of mouth. No one even knew that this program was available. So I tried to help get the word out a little bit, but I didn't want to have 2 different competing organizations. I think that, especially in Alzheimer's disease, we all need to just be working together as much as possible. But I would love to help you get this started. If you are a member, churches are very good places to get these started and very generous with their space, which is what I've noticed personally. So I would love to get your information and brainstorm with you about how we could get something started. Because since then, I've just kind of stayed at college campuses, but I would love to branch out to different communities as well.
Great. All right. That's okay. Great. So yeah, anybody who might want to talk with Paige further about setting up a Purple Pal groups near you, purplepalsclub@gmail.com is one way to reach Paige and her fellow pals. And I'm certainly happy to help connect folks. So you can send email to my alliance at kumc.edu. And this session is being recorded, as I think you all were aware when you joined, and it will be posted on our website within 24 hours. So you can always go back and watch again and or get the information that you need from Paige. And we will definitely stay connected. I want to do another call for any more questions or comments or things you'd like to know. Thank you so much to Paige and to Jan, also mom. Big fan of moms around here. And again, we are so appreciative of your willingness to share your family's story with us. And the pictures of your grandmother and the animals were, for me, quite exciting, except for not the birds. I am terrified of birds, except for a KU Jayhawk. And I don't know why I'm telling you that, except for I think your grandmother is very brave to be able to do that. I see Marge has her hand raised. So Marge, go ahead with your question and then we'll go back to Renee's question in the chat.
The movie that she recommended people see.
The movie, Paige, did you hear that?
Yes, it is Still Alice.
Oh, I think, okay. Is that about, what's his name? He's a local comedian. Just can't think of his name now. I think I've read the book or seen the movie.
Yeah, this one is about a woman who finds out she has early onset Alzheimer's disease, and I believe that she's actually a scientist of some sort in the movie. And then it kind of, I think it does a very good job of walking through how she eventually has to quit her job, which is extremely difficult, especially after you get a glimpse in the first part of the movie how hard she's worked for that. And then her husband gets a promotion, but they're going to have to move, and she has 3 kids and she's starting to have grandkids. And I think it just shows a really good job of it does a really good job of showing what it is actually like. And instead of like in The Notebook where you don't get to see the day-to-day struggles as much.
Okay. Thanks for that good question and reminder. And then Renee's wondering how old you have to be to volunteer for Purple Pals.
So we primarily work with college students, and part of the reason why I did that was because I was in college at the time, in undergrad at the time. And the other part was so many of our volunteers are CNAs or have specialized training, because many of them are pre-med or some sort. And so, or pre-nursing, we have a lot of nursing gals as well. And so usually I stick with college age folks, but I think that high schoolers could definitely do it. I think that anyone really can, as long as you are kind and want to sit there and have a conversation and hang out with your pals.
Perfect. Well, thank you. Paige, there was a couple things in the chat about making sure it was Still Alice with Julianne Moore from a few years ago. And yes, that's the one. And we have M. Wallace, Mr. Wallace. Thank you for putting the link, I think, to the IMDb page. So you can click on that and learn more about Still Alice if you like.
Awesome.
Okay. Well, again, I'm not going to be responsible for Paige not getting to class on time. So I will wrap us up for a bit. Paige, if you have any parting comments, you're welcome to to share those. I will say thank you very much. Loved your story. And like I said, we'll all be rooting for you, at least in our hearts, in June. Please let us know how it turns out.
I will. I really appreciate that. And thank you so much for inviting me here. I'm so glad that I was able to share my story with all of you, and I would love to get connected with all of you. So reach out to me.
Excellent. Okay. So one last thing, I always have to say one last thing, and that is that next week's topic for our webinar is Aging with Grace. And that one is especially meaningful to me because my middle name is Grace. So I love everything that has to do with Grace. My grandmother Grace had Alzheimer's disease, so that's why it is even more meaningful to me. Our speakers will be Dr. Ashley Shaw, who is one of our research experts, and Justin Brantley, who is a research associate with Dr. Shaw. And they are going to share some information, some general information about how dementias, especially of the Alzheimer type, how we identify them, diagnose, treat, prevent. And I believe they are going to have a special emphasis on dementia in minority populations. April is Minority Health Month. I mean, the truth is all the months are Alzheimer's month, right? We think about Alzheimer's all the time. We think about health all the time. There's no time that we don't want to think about what we can be doing to help people. But that's the special focus for April. So for our last webinar of April, we will have Dr. Shaw and Justin to give us some information about that. I've seen Justin present his information a few times, and he's going to be great. And of course, so is Dr. Shaw. So join us again next week for that. Watch your email for exciting news about all kinds of things. Thank you again to Paige. And thank you all for being here. And yes, thank you to Ms. Harding also for being here. We appreciate you. All right, everyone. With that, we'll say goodbye for the day. Take care.